I'm going to explain to you exactly why Tempo Demon Hunter has been the most powerful list in Standard for quite some time now. Tempo Demon Hunter takes advantage of tempo, taking over the board with as much stats as they can, while also doing a number of other things. So that's why it has out-tempoed every other deck in the format, because it not only keeps up with them, but also keeps up with them via card advantage. Usually the disadvantage to playing a tempo-style deck is that you lose in the card advantage and in the long game and the end game. Let's take a peek at the current list that a lot of players are running for Tempo Demon Hunter. There are cards in here such as Skull of Gul'dan, Warglaves, Metamorphosis, Glavebound. All of these cards gain so much value. Ultras is another big one. All of these cards gain you value, often 2 for 1-ing, if not even more. You know, Skull of Gul'dan will draw you 3 cards. This is on top of just being a generic tempo deck that runs very high value cards in the early game, like Battle Fiend, Beaming Sidekick, Blazing Battle Mage. All these cards are very high tempo for the mana that they cost. Twin Slice also very high tempo for the mana that it costs, especially after the nerf. Even like before the nerf, 0 mana wasting the card made this deck, it was actually less tempo before the nerf than after the nerf. All these cards again, Berserker, Bone Chewer, Brawler, Umberwing, Shadow Weaver, Satyr, all of these cards are super high tempo. So the deck revolves around playing very high tempo cards in the early game. This being turns 1 through 4 to the 1 through 5, very high tempo cards, and then not only having the reach to close out games where they were able to be very aggressive in the forms of Metamorphosis and Glavebound Adept and KU and Sunfury. So it doesn't matter what your opponent plays, as long as they haven't healed themselves. Usually you will find a finisher if you have an aggressive opener. But if they do manage to deal with your board and keep staying alive, then you have cards like Skull of Gul'dan and Warglaves that give you so much value that it's difficult to keep up with them. This is the primary reason that Tempo Demon Hunter is as powerful as it is and has stayed on top of the meta for as long as it has. So the trick to winning in this meta is just to beat Tempo Demon Hunter. And so now we get this meta where you have Tempo Demon Hunter, the most powerful deck in the format. You have the decks that beat Tempo Demon Hunter on a fairly consistent basis, and then you have the decks that beat the decks that beat Tempo Demon Hunter. So what can the Blizzard devs do to fix this scenario? They have tried 3 times now nerfing Tempo Demon Hunter, and clearly that hasn't worked. The list has just simply evolved, and in some cases gotten better after the Twin Slice nerf. I think the problem at the moment is that a lot of other decks in the format don't have the tools to be as versatile as Tempo Demon Hunter. If we think about the metagame for a second, there's not a deck that's as versatile as Tempo Demon Hunter. Tempo Demon Hunter has 3 game plans. The first game plan being to aggro you out in the beginning on turns 1, 2, and 3 by playing as much stats on the board as they can, and usually not only destroying your minions but also dealing pressure to face. That's plan 1. Plan 2 is to gain value with a card like Ultras, even Satyr, Glavebound, Warglaive, Skull of Gul'dan to outvalue you in the mid to late game. And then plan 3 is the reach plan. So even if you end up dealing with their board and they play a bunch of taunts, they can still kill you from close to 16 life using a combination of Twin Slices, KU and Sunfuries, Glavebound Adepts, and Metamorphosis charges. This deck attacks from all different angles, and in some ways that's a good thing. Decks should require you to solve a puzzle to win the game in a way, because it's requiring you to pick the right game plan for the exact moment that it is. Other decks don't attack like that. You have decks like Dragon Druid that just want to ramp into large enough threats that your opponent can't deal with it, and then that's like their only plan. They either get a large Glowfly Swarm off, or they end up playing a Ysera late into the game and winning off of value that way. That's their only plan, ramp and play the big cards. Highlander Hunter has the game plan of simply putting enough tempo and enough pressure onto the board that they can outvalue their opponents before they have a chance to win. This is the nature of a mid-range deck. Highlander Mage wants to roll the dice and outvalue their opponent via Casino. Rogue wants to outvalue their opponents via all their cards. The problem that we see here happening over and over again is that all of these decks still have one game plan. Rogue wants to play a very large Van Cleef after removing a bunch of your stuff. Highlander Hunter wants to outvalue your board state, create a big enough board that you can't deal with it, and then kill you. There's like no other game plan to winning with these decks, and Tempo Demon Hunter attacks from all different angles. So again, how do the Blizzard devs deal with this? I think that rather than nerfing Tempo Demon Hunter, they should instead buff the other classes so that they have the ability to attack at all different angles. The only other class that's close to this has got to be Warrior. Warrior has the ability to attack from many different angles. And you notice there's a similarity here between Warrior and Tempo Demon Hunter, that they both have weapons and access to hit things with their face on top of playing high-statted minions. Cards like Imprisoned Ganarg have so much value and tempo at the same time that it's almost difficult to replace this card. The only thing that beats it is Tempo Demon Hunter. They have cards that have much more tempo and value. A card like Warmaul Challenger has super high value and tempo because it's not only killing one of your opponent's minions, but also giving you a body that you can use with Enrage. Very high value while also providing very high tempo. This is a good thing. You don't want this game to be a boring slugfest that lasts for 20 turns and whoever plays the largest minion first will often win the game. This is boring. This stuff that Tempo Demon Hunter is doing is very exciting. You play very small minions that get larger, and then you play more larger minions that end up trading, and you have decision points on where to attack with such minions, and if you trade or go face, or if you follow the game plan, depending on what cards are in your hand. This is very good. This kind of deck is good, and they shouldn't nerf decks like this. Instead, they should buff other classes so that they have the ability to build decks like this. Most other decks and most other classes in the format really don't have another angle to attack from. Let's take a peek at Paladin's cards. Paladin really only has one deck that they can build, and that's an aggro deck. If you take a look strictly at their legendaries, so their best legendary at the moment is Murgle. So of course the deck that you build around Murgle is going to be an aggressive Murloc style strategy. And the reason I'm looking at higher rarity cards is because that's often what decks are built around. You don't build a deck around a common card. You often build a deck around legendaries and epics, and then fit common in to have filler. If you take a peek at Paladin's best epics at the moment, your best epic is probably the weapon, and then that's about it. None of these epics really stand out as super playable. Maybe the Libram deck is playable. So your best epic is an aggressive card, and your best legendary is an aggressive card. So of course the only Paladin deck that's even possible is an aggressive deck. This is a problem. Why shouldn't we buff some of these cards to make these decks more playable? Shaman's probably in one of the worst spots it's been in a long time. There's not a lot of synergy and a lot of good legendary or epic cards that I really want to be playing while in Shaman. The Lurker Below is probably the best, and it's very generic. It doesn't have a game plan you want to be playing around. This doesn't give me a direction to go with a deck. This is just a 6-drop that you fit in every Shaman deck because it's one of the best cards in Shaman. None of these other legendaries make me want to do something. This isn't very good. Most of these just aren't very good. So what they need to do is they need to take time, and maybe this is probably the second best. And again, this doesn't really put you anywhere. Spell damage, that's super generic. Battlecry, draw 3 spells, reduce their cost by 3. Again, very generic. It wants you to run some spells, but you run a lot of spells in Shaman anyways. All of this is just very generic and doesn't push me in a direction to build the deck. Compare that to Tempo Demon Hunter, and we look at the legendary cards. The legendary cards in Tempo Demon Hunter are so straightforward and so strong, they all work together, right? Besides this card. We look at Metamorphosis, KU, and Sunfury, and Ultras. These all want to fit in relatively aggressive decks, even Ultras, because Ultras hits face. So rather than diminish the idea that Tempo Demon Hunter is just the best deck and will generically stay the best deck, Blizzard devs need to focus on curating deck lists to fit a game plan, and then have a way that these cards, all the cards in a class, are good enough to not only play that game plan, but play a very fluid game plan. Again, one of the strongest suits of Tempo Demon Hunter right now is that it's very aggressive and also has other game plans in the late game. Other aggressive lists, like Pirate Warrior, doesn't have that option. Their late game plan is Arcanite Reaper. There's not a card that's super late game that also fits into a somewhat aggressive playstyle. Decks that can work in a way that they're very fast and very aggressive, they work. That's fine. Aggro decks are fine. But they need to also have some sort of ability to keep up with the other decks in the format. And I think the cards have come to a point that it's not even fair to just have 3 classes right now that are just so good. So I hope that summed it up for you guys. If you like this video, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, the whole jam. But that's it for me today.